Okay, cool.
There we go. We're live. All right. Hello, everyone. Again, my name is Sam. I am the Deputy Director at Progress Michigan. I'm going to start sharing my screen now. Let's see here. Bam. And present. There we go. All right. My name is Sam Inglot, Deputy Director at Progress Michigan. Been with the organization coming up on 7 years this August. I was a reporter before that. Did a lot with public policy reporting and things like that in Lansing and around the Capitol prior to joining the Progress Michigan crew. And I'm joined today by Cayley Winters. Cayley, you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, everyone. My name is Cayley Winters. I'm the West Michigan Communications Organizer at Progress Michigan. I've been with Progress Michigan now just a little over a year, and I'm really excited. My first spokesperson's training was with the Ecology Center last year. I can't believe it's already been a full year. So I'm really excited to do it again and get to know you folks a little bit.
All right. And, ooh. There we go. Look at that transition. Today is our spokesperson training. Now, normally we do this in person, so it'll be interesting to see how this works out. I think we're still going to get you guys hopefully learn some good things. We'll get some good practice. And you will be talking today. So while I think a lot of us are used to being on a lot of Zoom calls, a lot of webinars as of late, this one you will definitely be talking in, given that it is a spokesperson training. But there are a couple of things that we hope you all take away from this, in addition to the things that Mara talked about. Prep and execution of interviews and feeling more confident as a spokesperson, and understanding some of the interview best practices. We will probably get into a few things where you're saying, Sam, why would I ever need to know that? Like, that seems so niche, so nitpicky. But what you'll find with interviews is the less guesswork you have to do, the more that you understand sort of everything from what do I do with my hands to what do I wear to what happens if I get a question I don't know how to answer. If you have some techniques and some knowledge of how to answer those things, how to fill in some of those gaps, you'll feel more confident. And confidence definitely comes through in interviews, and a confident person is probably a person that's also delivering the right message for their issue, their organization, their campaign. So before we jump in, what's my next slide here? Why don't we just kind of have folks introduce themselves and maybe say something, talk about, you can say your name, where you're from, what you do, and one thing that you're kind of hoping to learn from the training today. Do you, Mara, do you want to call on people? Would that probably be, so there's a little bit of a...
Yeah, for sure. So, yeah, well, let's do it popcorn style. So you'll go through everything, and then you'll popcorn on someone else in the chat. So let's start with Catherine, just because she's the person right below me on the screen.
I'm Catherine Starr. I'm a social worker and therapist in private practice in Ann Arbor. I work with children and teens and families who've experienced trauma. I think what I'm hoping to get out of today is I actually just watched the Part 1 webinar last night. It's been a really stressful week. A lot of people are struggling right now, so I feel like I just kind of want to have more experience and to put together my elevator pitch, since I have some ideas in my head, but haven't had a chance to kind of flesh that out of what it would look like to kind of combine my passion for the environment as well as my passion for helping kids and families. And so just wanting to like be with everybody and hear other ideas. And I think feel more confident is definitely something I'm looking forward to. Do you want me to pass it on to somebody else? How about Madeline?
Sure. Hi, everyone. Can you all hear me okay? It's nice to meet you all. I missed the orientation a while back, so this is my first time interfacing with everyone. So yeah, my name is Madeline Mihal. I currently work at Michigan Medicine in Ann Arbor in the complex care management program, and I work with patients who have complex medical needs and kind of help to coordinate their medical care and make sure that they are connected to any supports and resources that they need. And then I'm also getting my master's of public health at Wayne State University right now. So a lot of the topics we've been I'm very passionate about, and hoping to continue to learn more. And today, I've actually never interacted with the media before, so I'm hoping to gain some skills and tools to prepare myself for that as well. Just to try to connect my passion and be able to communicate that with legislators and the media. So I guess I'll pass it on to Becky next.
Okay, good morning. My name is Becky Himes. I live in Luther, and I am a assistant professor at Ferris State in the nursing program. And for me, what I'm hoping to get out of this, I'm generally pretty quiet, but then when I start talking, I tend to babble a lot. And so I need to find a happy medium there and be pointed and focused in my interactions once I start talking. So I will pass it on to Deborah.
Thanks, Becky. I am Deborah Collins. I am a therapist in private practice in Ann Arbor, but I come from the video and film community historically, did that for over 20 years. So one of my goals out of this especially is to find a way to spread these messages on the micro and macro levels. So with the clients I work with currently, because they're super important to me, just the stuff that they're going through, their traumas and stuff. But I would like to have these messages get louder and louder. You know, I'm still surprised in 2020 how many people don't understand even the basics of these issues. My real passion is probably on the food side of things, just because we all eat a tremendous amount of food. And, you know, I've been flabbergasted that people don't know anything about the food industry, and that they truly think that, you know, whatever they pick from certain stores, like, you know, that is just healthy. So, you know, from this particular training, I was really happy to see that one of the main things that we're going to work on today, or one of the things we're working on, is how to pivot in the interview and bring it back, because I know that that's a tactic of a lot of journalists to get you off topic. And for me, like, because I'm passionate, it's easy to get derailed. So I am grateful that this will be a part of it, because I know, you know, after everything Sam has said, that saying succinct is super important to the message. So that's what I'm excited about. Now I have to look through my list of people because I can only see the people who've already spoken. So I'm going to give this to Dawn.
Hi, I'm Dawn Smith. I live in Kalamazoo, Michigan. I am a faculty specialist too in the nursing program at Western Michigan University. I teach community-based and population-based nursing. Prior to going to working at Western, I worked in public health for 18 years. I am a farm girl. So it's like my passion. I've always felt very connected to the earth, which we all should and do. But I would say that part of pesticide use would be one of my passions. But the climate and energy is another one of my passions. What I hope to gain today is I've had a little bit of experience with media when I was in public health. With my expertise of immunizations and vaccines. I've done interviews with MLive. I've done some things, actually video. I was not recorded, but I did some live interviews. But I just want to learn to kind of hone in those nerves, and also, like with Becky saying, pinpoint my message so I don't start rambling. I think those are some things. And I think that has to go back to that nerves, because I still feel just so overwhelmed when dealing with the media that I'm going to say something stupid or just, you know, come off as not knowing what I'm talking about. So some tactics to help kind of, you know, bring that in a little bit. And I will, again, I don't know, Shania, did I pronounce your name right? Or Shania? Okay.
No, thank you. I was very close. It's Shanae. I'm from Iowa originally, and I moved to Ann Arbor about a year ago for school. I'm currently a master's student in the School of Public Health and the School of Urban Planning at the University of Michigan. And I'm interested in the health effects of gentrification and resource allocation and how that relates to the environment. What I hope to learn today, I'm really interested in how to pivot during interviews. I don't really have a lot of media experience either, but I'm also interested in how to really intentionally tailor the elevator pitch to whatever audience we're addressing. Sorry, and then I will pass this off to Waleed.
Hi everyone, my name is Waleed. I'm from Ann Arbor, but I'm a researcher at Wayne State Center for Urban Studies. Today, what I really hope to get out of it is just kind of refining my interview strategies. I think a lot of us have familiarity with interviewing in different situations and contexts, but I think there's a lot of little nuances when it comes to interviewing with a reporter. So I just kind of want to get all of that straightened out and just kind of refine my ability to do that. And I will popcorn to Cayley.
No need to popcorn to me. How about we have Rebecca go then?
Sure. So I'm Rebecca Munich. I'm the Deputy Director at the Ecology Center. And I am so excited to see how this works in an online format, having been to all of the others in person. And I think it'll be good. I'm thinking about it in this actual way of how do I better communicate if I am on an online interview or something like that, because it's not something I actually have had to do very often. So, you know, thinking about how those skills are going to translate over to a virtual format for a while would be really helpful. And then also, as my dog walks into the room, like knowing that everybody's going to have new distractions and things like that in sort of a virtual spokesperson context. And I don't know if any tips will come up about that and how to handle those. Maybe it's better now because of the pandemic, because everybody's used to seeing people's babies and puppies and kitties on the Zoom calls all the time. So maybe it's not something we worry about in the same way that we might have, you know, several months ago. And let's see, I'm on my phone, so I have to like scroll to see who hasn't gone. Heather?
Hi, my bandwidth is not perfect, so I probably will kind of go without picture a little bit today. I'm just looking to learn. I was a reporter many decades ago. So for me, it's different to be on the other side of it. And I'd really like to increase my advocacy and learn more about how to be on the other side of it in a good way and in the best way. I'm also a graduate student and a professor at Michigan State University. So I'm used to sort of lecturing and being in that mode. And I think sometimes talking to reporters is a very different thing. So just looking for any sort of skills that I can get in that way and looking to increase my confidence also with my advocacy.
Great. Is that everybody? That's all I'm seeing on my screen as far as people. So.
Yep, that's everybody.
Okay, cool. Thank you so much to everyone for sharing. I think, you know, as far as objectives go, hopefully folks will be able to take a couple of things with them after this because we're going to hit on, I think, a number of those areas. And throughout this whole presentation, you know, we're pretty informal, we're pretty flexible and loose. So if you got a question, if you got some pushback, anything like that, feel free to let us know, because we want you to, you know, like I said, get all those questions answered, get those nerves out of the way so we can move forward. And if anyone's wondering, I got 2 screens, so I might go like from here to here, and just be cognizant of that. And don't do that on Zoom interviews, and we'll probably talk about that once we get into practicing. So real quick, we want to stay on message. That is our goal as messengers for our issues, our organizations, our campaigns, our events. And it's important to stay on message. And, you know, again, with Progress Michigan being a communications focused organization, we take messaging, narrative, all things related to communications at sort of an ethos level versus just a, well, what sounds right? What do we think works? We kind of have a long-term strategy built into it. And this is where this concept of this narrative house kind of comes in, because I think it provides a good framework for us to understand holistically the importance of staying on message, being a good spokesperson, having plans, procedures, protocols, all that sort of stuff that can be wrapped up within communications. So what we're really going to be talking about today are a lot of the strategies for building the pillars of this house. So those are your messages, your talking points, and that kind of stuff can bleed over into social media as well. But starting at the top, I think it's important for all organizations, issues, and campaigns to have a narrative, to have written down a way that you talk about yourself as an organization and the aspirational view and vision that you have for your community, your state, the country. And we put that on the roof because that's what we live under. That's what makes our house a house. It's what protects us from the elements. It's what people see when they're walking down the street. So it's important, I think, for organizations and campaigns to have a narrative, again, something aspirational, pie in the sky. And then your messages should really help support that narrative. And that's really kind of the core of where staying on message comes from. If you can imagine this house with pillars that aren't connected to the narrative, then it weakens the structure. And that's what going off message can do. And then at the base of our narrative and our messaging should really be a foundation of values, which we'll talk about, I think, throughout this process. But we want to try to have as much as possible our messages, our talking points, and our communication strategy rooted in a values standpoint. Because while facts, figures, statistics, empirical evidence can help us, build up our argument, really what we're trying to do more often than not is capture people's attention and lead to a desired action with what we're talking about. And values and emotional triggers are really the best way to do that. Because if you can make people feel something first through talking to them about shared values, empathy, shared experiences, then you can provide the facts, figures, statistics to help strengthen that feeling that they already have. So this is sort of just a comms ethos, a way of thinking about the importance of staying on message, the importance of making sure that everything that we do is coming from a value standpoint, and that we're always thinking back to our organizational, our issue, our campaign's narrative. So now we're going to talk elevator pitches, because I know that was something that we talked about a lot on the webinar, and we're going to talk a lot about today. So this is just going to be kind of a little bit of a recap for some folks. So an elevator pitch is your go-to mantra when talking about your issue. It should be a short and concise statement that can be sort of a bookend, if you will, to any interview that you do. So you can start with it and end with it. That way you know the beginning and the end of the interview is sort of contained within the right message, and hopefully everything that you said in between that beginning and the end just builds on that elevator pitch that you already And an easy way to construct an elevator pitch is to use what I call the message trident, which is convey a piece of information, convey values, and some sort of action. And again, I think the action piece is really important, especially in the type of work. I mean, when you're talking public health, when you're talking toxic chemicals, PFAS, renewable energy, food systems, these are things that people I think are incredibly passionate about, but also there's a lot of problems, right? There are a lot of threats to public health with toxic chemicals, renewable energy. There's a lot of bad things that can happen. But we always want to convey some action because we need to show people that it doesn't have to be this way. Here's a problem. Here's what we can do about it. Here's why it matters. So that's just if you have a 3-sentence long elevator pitch, conveying these 3 pieces of information, that's a successful elevator pitch. And really, elevator pitches can come into play because usually one of the first questions that you'll get asked if you're doing a press conference, if you're at a protest, if you are releasing a piece of research, like, why are we here today? Can you tell us what's happening? Can you explain what's going on? Those sort of 10,000-foot view questions are usually some of the first that folks will get in an interview. And this is a good way to frame the issue, short, concise, but in its entirety, explaining to people what's happening, why it matters, and what can be done about it. So here is an elevator pitch example. So I just kind of riffed on some renewable energy for this one. So, and this could be an example one. Michigan must move away from toxic and expensive fossil fuels and invest more in renewable energy. Powering our communities with renewable energy will lead to healthier neighborhoods, savings for families, and the promise of a brighter future for generations to come. That's why we need to push lawmakers to support laws that require utilities to invest in more renewable energy to power our state. So taking that and kind of breaking it down into those 3 pieces, again, it's 3 sentences, but there's a lot sort of packed in there. And it's not just, again, off the cuff, what sounds good. This can be used as a template. This can be used as a formula to help you take a lot of complex thoughts and think, what is the most important pieces? What are these 3 pieces of information, or 3 points that I want to make? So, information, Michigan must move away from toxic and expensive fossil fuels and invest in more in renewable energy. That's our thesis statement, right? That's what's happening. That's the flavor of the day. And then values. And this is where you kind of have a lot of flexibility, and you can pull from personal experience, personal stories, things like that, how people are affected, right? That's what moves people, is when people can empathize with what's going on because of a shared experience or shared values. So healthier neighborhoods, the promise of a brighter future for generations to come. I threw in the savings for families because, that way maybe you can get some people who are more maybe economically inclined or thinking about from the pocketbook angle. But that's where you can really, again, passionately speak about why this stuff matters. And then action, that's why we need lawmakers to support laws that push companies to invest more in renewable energy. And action can be, call your lawmaker, get involved, support this bill, shop locally, support organic farmers, test your home for lead. Any sort of call to action should be included in your elevator pitch. So, do we have any questions real quick on elevator pitches and talking points? Because I think we went over that in the webinar. I think, there might be enough people. Cayley, what do you think? Do you think we need to break into groups, or, because we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Yeah, I think we could break into
2 groups. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So what we'll do is, if we can just split the group in half, have Cayley go with one group, I'll go with another group, and we'll have you all share your elevator pitches and the accompanying talking points, and we'll give you some feedback. We'll have folks just kind of weigh in, see what they think about them, and see if we can do a little bit of refining or tweaking, because the issues that you wrote your elevator pitch and your talking points around are also what we'll use to do the practice interviews. So yeah, any other quick questions though before we break into that? All right.
All right, just give me a minute to
Sure.
add people to the room. Okay. And then, Cayley and Sam, how long do you want folks to have in these rooms?
What did we say for what's on the schedule? I don't have the schedule in front of me.
We have until 10:40. So do you want to do like 10 minutes?
Yeah, like
and
10
then I'll pop in and check on you.
Sure, 10:40, 10:45. That should be enough time.
Okay, cool. And then,
because I'm sure people were just agonizing over these last night, staying up late, probably calling family members to run them by them, you know.
Okay, cool. So the rooms are going to be open in a minute. You'll get a little notice. If you're on the phone, you'll also hear, you could hear that as well. But I'll pop in and out to make sure that everyone didn't get lost in like the matrix.
Hopefully, you know, everyone had a chance to speak up, get a few pointers on their elevator pitches. Share my screen again. Can folks see it? Okay, cool.
Yep.
All right. So now we're going to talk, I'm going to be talking a lot here now so what we're going to be going through now are sort of a mix of like media relations, interview prep, best practices. Mara, just so I'm making sure I'm keeping on time, when did I say we were taking a break?
You said originally 11:15.
Okay, cool. That's what I'll aim for. So this is going to be a lot of information now. This is going to be a lot of talking. This is where we're going to get into some kind of like nitty-gritty stuff, but feel free to ask questions throughout this entire process. So before an interview, you want to become a reporter yourself. And so ask some questions of the reporter. Main one is like, when is their deadline? If a reporter calls you up out of the blue and you're busy with something and you can't do that interview right then, or you are, you know, you don't feel prepared, you need some time to collect yourself, maybe practice some questions, write a few things down, find out what their deadline is, and then get back to them. But definitely honor that deadline, because reporters, you know, live and die by the deadline, and respecting their time constraints will go a long way in sort of building that relationship. You can also figure out what angle they're kind of coming from, whether they're just sort of trying to get a broad take on a particular issue around renewable energy, or maybe they're asking about a specific bill. Maybe they are reacting to something that a prominent person said and are looking for you to give a rebuttal or building on their statement. You can also find out who else they're talking to. You know, at Progress Michigan, if I ask a reporter, hey, who else have you talked to on this issue? And they say, oh, you know, the Mackinac Center, which is you know, free market think tank. Well, then I know that I'm probably being brought in to be the counterweight, you know, the left versus right sort of both sides sort of argument. But if it's about the Freedom of Information Act and I know that they've talked to the Mackinac Center, then I know we're probably going to be saying similar things, because despite being on different ends of the political spectrum, Progress Michigan and the Mackinac Center are on the same page when it comes to like government transparency reforms. You can also ask about the format of the interview. Now, if somebody's like just calling you up and looking to talk on the phone, that's one thing. But if you are, you know, a live TV interview, if somebody's looking to come in and film you on a camera, if it is a radio show with a live call-in feature, or like a Fox 2's Let It Rip sort of style format. Those interview styles will all determine how you can approach it. In addition to finding out like how long you will have, right? Because there's a big difference between a print reporter just trying to get a quote for a story and we're going to have you on the radio for 10 minutes talking about an issue. There's different ways to prepare. There are different things to expect. And that's, again, live, pre-recorded. And same thing with location. Find out, you know, if you need to be at a certain place at a certain time, just like with any other, you know, professional meeting. So if this is one of the things where if this is what you take away, like, great. Like these are the three things that I always tell people. If you know, from the people who I work with months on end to like develop campaigns and really build like long-term spokespeople, to the folks where it's like, I have an interview coming up and I don't know what to do and I'm panicking, like, tell me what to do. These are the three things I would tell them. 1, keep it short and concise. 2, feel free to say, I don't know. And then practice, practice, practice. And we'll break into these a little bit more depth here. So keep it short and concise. The average TV clip of a person, you know, you see the person on camera, they're responding to something, average length of time is anywhere between 7 and 14 seconds. So keeping your answers short and concise, and everyone's read newspapers or online articles, you know, the block quote paragraph that somebody's using is not everything that was said by that person during the interview, more than likely. So it's important to keep your answers short and concise, because when you start rambling, a few things can happen. 1, you can lose control of the message, because if you start talking and just keep talking and keep talking, you don't know what that reporter could pull out of there. And I, for one, don't think, you know, that reporters are nefarious or trying to take anybody out of context purposefully, you know, 99.9% of the time. But it's our job as messengers to control our message and make sure that our message is getting into the content that the reporters are creating. So by keeping your answers short and concise, you know exactly what they can print. You know exactly what you responded with to various questions. And it also gives you a more sense of confidence, because once you start rambling, you might lose what the point you were trying to make was. You might forget the question. You might say something that you didn't mean to say. So just keeping your answers short and concise can go a long way in controlling the message. When that little voice in the back of your head says, "Ooh, say that other thing, say that other thing," that's usually a good place to stop, because more often than not, one of the last questions that you will get in an interview is there anything else you'd like to add? Is there anything I missed? So that's a good time that you can bring up those other things at the end. And, you know, when I was a journalist, one of the things they taught us to do was to utilize silence to our advantage, because there is a natural human inclination to want to fill dead space. So if you're on the phone with somebody and they ask you a question and you answer it, there will be, sometimes they'll use like this, and there's like, you get like this, like, ooh, they want me to keep talking, or what I didn't say wasn't good enough and they want me to keep going. If you get approached with that silence, just say, is there, like, do you need me to explain more? Did you have a follow-up? That sort of thing. So just be confident and concise with what you're saying, and then go from there. I don't know. This is a phrase that you should be very comfortable saying, because, and only be an expert where you're not. Stick to your experiences, your knowledge, and don't try to fudge answers or make, you know, half claims, or, well, I think it's this, but I really don't know. What you can always say is, I don't know, but I can try to find out. Or, I don't know, here's what I do know. And then you can get back to, and that's kind of a part of pivoting that we'll talk about in a moment here. You know, again, don't be an expert where you're not. And sometimes you will get, you know, a reporter asking you about a study or a certain bill or a piece of information that you just don't have the information on to speak to with any kind of a degree of authority, just say that. If it's something that you don't know, but you should, then say, I don't know that, but I'm going to go find out and I'll let you know. So when is your deadline? And I can email you that information. So it's just important for you to be confident with who you are, what you know, and the message that you want to deliver, and not to deviate from that too much, because you can just imagine the sorts of problems that can come from you riffing on a piece of legislation that you haven't read, or a piece of public policy that you don't really know. So just stick to what you do know. And then practice. Whether you are ice skating, woodworking, opera singing, everything takes practice to get good at. And the same thing goes with speaking with the media, public speaking, talking, concisely and eloquently about issues that we're passionate about. I can fly off the handle. I can get on my soapbox about things. I'm sure like a lot of other people here with issues that we're passionate about. That's why it's important to practice these interview techniques that we're going to be talking about. Even on issues that I am 100% confident on, if a reporter calls me up and I haven't, done interviews in a while, or I've been sitting at my computer silent for 3 hours, I might go, this is back when we were all in the office together, but I would walk into, a colleague's office and be like, hey, throw some questions at me. Like, I need to warm up, right? Our bodies are machines. And if you are like just climbing out of bed, like you've barely even like walked around the room, doing an interview, you might be a little tight. You might not be as, your mind is working, right? So practice talking out loud, practice talking your interview or your elevator pitch into a mirror. Practice it on your friends, your family, just like, hey, how did that sound, right? You can even record yourself and hear it back. I know everyone always says, oh, I hate hearing my voice. But these are things that you can do to help you feel more confident. Especially if you like the way you sound, like, ooh, man, the way I said that was choice. Like, that's good to know, right? Like, this is a great line for me. Like, when I say this line, it kills. Like, people love it. Like, that's a good thing to know. And you only learn that by practicing. So that's something I would definitely encourage folks to do, and that's what we're really going to try to get some of that out of the way today, because people talked about nerves or feeling unprepared, and just little things can just help you feel so much more confident, because a confident messenger is an effective messenger. So practice.
And I just want to add to, especially right now in the time of COVID, where everybody is still home and we're not going to be really face to face, there are going to be times where you don't talk to somebody for hours at a time. So if it's even, you already know what you're going to say and you have everything down, even, 10 minutes before your interview starts, just start talking out loud your talking points, what you're going to do, because I guarantee if you go 3 or 4 hours without talking to somebody, and then you start talking to the reporter, you're going to sound like you just got up.
Yeah.
You're not going to sound that great on the radio.
Yeah. These are muscles, right? Like, this is a part of your body. Like, you wouldn't go, go on a quick run without stretching, right? You wouldn't, start on a hike without hydrating. Like, our bodies are machines. We need oxygen. We need blood flow. We want to be loose and limber with what we're doing. So like Cayley said, talking out loud is a big piece of that. Actually, I did an interview probably about a week ago where, I'm sitting here in my office, and the only person I've talked to is like my cat, yelling at him for scratching at the door or whatever. And I had to do an interview with MLive. And so I walked around my office. I got up, I got the blood flowing, and I just talked out loud to myself. I was like, okay, what's a question he might ask me? And I would respond to it. I practiced an elevator pitch, and I actually wrote some things down before that interview and kind of tested them out. And I used a few of the lines that I wrote within the interview. So like Cayley said, like, practice this stuff. Like, just like we reviewed this presentation before we came on, review your talking points, try practicing, move your mouth a little bit, get the blood flowing, get the oxygen flowing. So that's important. Okay. Just as important. So you've practiced, right? You know your talking points. You know you're going to keep it short and concise. You're only going to be an expert where, you are. You got your elevator pitch. You got your talking points. Sometimes, though, it's important to remember that our job is to get our message out. We need to be and that's why we're talking to the media, right? We're not necessarily talking to reporters because we want to do them a favor. We're not talking to reporters because we want to make sure that, that they get every question answered that they want, or that we're, responding to every little controversy or piece of information. Our job is to get our message out. So pivoting can come into play when maybe the conversation starts to get away from you, or you get a really tough question that you just can't answer in that moment, or you're confronted with some really stupid BS question that has no place in the conversation. And pivoting will take practice, but if you can get good at it, and there are people who are really good at it. I mean, watch any interview with an elected official on like CNN, MSNBC, anything like that. And you will find that there are people who can talk a lot without saying anything. And this is I remember there was, when I was a reporter, and I'd be sitting there with my phone, and I'd be like, okay, yep, talking to the person, like asking questions, typing out notes, and I'd be like, all right, that was a kick-ass interview. That was good. I got some good stuff. And then I go back and I look at my notes, and I was like, they didn't answer any of my questions. Like, it sounded like they were, but they were just saying what they wanted to say the whole time. And that's where pivoting kind of comes into play. So one is like finesse matters. And you don't want people, just saying no comment, or I'm not going to answer that question, sort of puts up a very defensive barrier that we don't necessarily want to project with the media. So there are little turns of phrases that you can use if presented with something that is either outlandish or totally off topic, or something that you don't really know about. When we were working on the minimum wage and earned paid sick time campaigns, we had kind of a variety of different people that we needed to prep for interviews. And, a minimum wage worker who got fired from their job for trying to strike in pushing for a higher minimum wage, they're going to have a very different perspective and elevator pitch and talking points and message in general than an economist who is supportive of the effort to raise the minimum wage. So when we had that minimum wage worker who had this great life experience, needed this raise to support themselves and their families, we knew that sometimes a reporter might say, well, this think tank or this right-wing, whoever says that the sky will fall and all the jobs will die and the economy will be sad if we raise the minimum wage. And one turn of phrase that we used was, I don't know about that. Here's what I do know, which then allowed them to get right into their personal experience. Because, you're talking about the site, I don't know about that. Here's what I do know. The minimum wage right now is not enough for me to survive on. I'm working full time and my family is still living in poverty. You can also, so that's an easy one. I don't know. Here's what I do know. That's one that you can like put in your pocket. You can use that all the time. There's also like a power move, which when confronted with something that is like outlandish or off topic, you can just say, look, here's what we're here. Here's what I'm talking about. Or look, that's not the case. Here is what the case. Here's what's actually happening. I would say, again, most situations that you're going to find yourselves in, you're not going to be in a confrontational interview format. But there are times when you can just say that is not the case. Or look, here's what I'm here to talk about. Or those sorts of things. And again, it's really going to be catered to you. Another one that somebody came up with when we were doing the minimum wage campaign, when presented again with the opposition's talking points about economic fallout. One of the things that somebody came up with was they're talking about what was it? It was that's an economic theory. I'm here to talk about economic reality. And the reality is people are working full time and still living in poverty. People are having to choose between paying the bills or buying food for their families. People are, so again, you can use that sort of emotionally charged power statement if you feel comfortable doing that as an additional pivoting technique. One other thing is if you find yourself in a really bad interview, which again, odds are 99% of the time you are not going to find yourself in a confrontational interview. And if you get a sense that something could be a confrontational interview, some right-wing podcast or something wants to talk to you about your issue, that's where being a reporter comes in and finding out who this person is, what angle they're coming from, maybe how they've reported on the issue before. But if you do find yourself in a place where you have to be on a radio show for 5 minutes and this person's being really hostile, just take up the space. Just keep talking. And that's where the practice can come in. So just try to fill up the time. If you're getting like peppered with these really aggressive lines of questioning, then just try to keep talking. Try to take up the space as much as you can with your messaging that's on point, short and concise, based in values, linked back to your narrative, and repeat. Because again, our job is to get our message out there. And if you're being asked a lot of different like nitpicky questions about your issue, there's nothing wrong with just going back and pulling from your elevator pitch to continually reinforce the main messages of what you're talking about. Any questions on pivoting? Okay. And you guys will get a chance to practice some pivots later on. So let's talk interview formats real quick. And again, you've done your due diligence. You have asked the reporter, what the format is, the style of interview that it is, and then there are some considerations that you get to make. And depending on the format, there are different things that you can do to be prepared or to execute the interview effectively. So print, right? And then when I say print, that's, online, something like MLive or the Detroit Free Press. Same thing with like print, Jackson Citizen Patriot, Holland Sentinel, sort of our traditional, what we think of traditional media. This can be done in person or over the phone. Be ready to have your picture taken or submit a headshot to people if they need that. And sometimes with print, you'll get a reporter where, they're not publishing a story that day, but it's something that they're kind of working on going forward. So there can be multiple conversations leading up to the actual publication of a story. Obviously, if it's in person, then you will be, interacting with that person face to face. Right now, 6 feet apart, obviously. If it's over the phone, have some notes out in front of you. Walk around, be comfortable. And that's kind of a big piece of all of these. If no one is seeing you, if you are on the phone, that gives you the ability to be in whatever state is best for you to be confident and deliver the best interview possible. So if that's, you're in your bathrobe pacing around the house with, papers stuck to the wall and a red string connecting them, you can do that. If you prefer to lay in a hammock in your backyard for some reason while doing interviews, you can do that. Very different than television, where you are going to be, people are going to see you, and there's the different, there's now the camera involved. So you want to make sure that you are looking good, presenting good. So first thing, live versus pre-recorded. And this I would say is true for almost any interview. The MLive interview that I talked about just a little while ago, I remember I screwed up some quote and I said, hold on, I'm going to start over. And that's if it's a pre-recorded interview, if it's with a print reporter on the phone or a radio interview where they're just trying to get a good soundbite, I have yet to encounter a reporter who said nope, you're stuck with that quote. And if you're on camera, just drop a bunch of F-bombs, then they can't use it because of FCC stuff. I'm just kidding. Don't do that. No, that's but because at the end of the day, the TV reporter wants to put together a package. They want the story to have you know, the pieces that it needs, and they want you to have a good soundbite so that their audience can understand the story. Same thing with radio. So if you do screw something up, if you say something that is wrong, or if you just didn't say it as eloquently, or you bungled, or there was lots of ums or ahs in there, just say, hey, I screwed that up. Can I start over? Odds are they will let you. If you are putting on a press event, have B-roll ideas. B-roll is the footage that sort of plays, you know, if they're talking about roads, it's like, oh, the car's driving over the potholes, or the long shot of the orange barrels lined up. If you are going out of your way to do an earned media event, consider some B-roll concepts, because that will just help you build a good relationship with those reporters, because then they have less work to do. Anytime Progress Michigan has released research or anything like that, and people have come into our office to interview us, we always propose the research drop B-roll, where the camera's focused on the table and then a big stack of papers just sort of falls onto it. Or they do kind of a slow pan over a series of documents, a zoom in on the logo of your sign outside of your office. Have those kind of ideas in mind, and be flexible with what TV reporters are looking for so that they can complete the whole package. And then we'll be doing some practice Zoom interviews, because that's the world that we're in right now. And probably going forward, people will probably continue to use Zoom for a lot of different things. But there are just, again, some little nitpicky things that you want to consider. You know, like this is not a good angle, like, for anyone. Like, you don't want the camera like looking up your nose. You know, you don't want to like have your head down here. Like, good eye contact with the camera, not what's going on here, not what's going on over there. And especially with like Zoom, it's hard not to watch your own face. Sometimes it's hard to not watch the reactions of the people that are on the call. So it's just important to, you know, eye level, maintain eye contact with that camera, avoid distractions on the outside, and just talk to that camera like it's a person. Don't think about everyone else that might be watching it later. Think about, I'm just talking to a person right now, and this is their face. So just a couple things with Zoom there. And then radio, very similar to some of the other things that we talked about. Odds are no one's going to be able to see you, so have some notes out. And if you are a notes person, you know, or you've got a big piece of research or policy or a fact sheet or something like that you want to go over, spread it out on a table. Don't have, you know, the 8 pieces of paper in one stack, so then you're having to like flip through them. You can spread them out, highlight things, put sticky note. I'm a big sticky note guy. So put sticky notes on things to make little notes, and be comfortable, move around if you have to, because no one can see you. Now, if you're doing an in-person radio, which I think that happens sometimes still, where people will invite you to a radio station and beyond. Again, that's just, you know, find out, is that recording of that radio broadcast also being Facebook Live, or is there a video component to it? So it starts with asking questions and finding out the environment that you will be interacting in the media with, or you will be interacting with the media in, and then taking some little steps to make sure that you're comfortable, confident, and prepared to be able to execute that interview effectively. Any questions on interview format techniques? All right. So I'll fly through this, and then we'll take a break here in a little bit. But this is sort of, I say it's the little things. There's a lot of little things when it comes to being a good spokesperson. Location, posture and positioning, and then one of the most common questions we get is, what do I wear? What will I wear for my big TV debut? So location, location, location. If you are doing your own earned media event, don't make the location a drag on your message. Have it be a net positive for your message. So I've got 2 examples here. I'm going to start with the Bob Young example. So Bob Young ran for Michigan Supreme Court, and the idea behind his campaign launch here was really good. He went to his old neighborhood in Detroit where his house had been like burned down and demolished, and he talked about how he wanted to help old neighborhoods like his, right? And kind of, it's a great start. Here's where I came from. I'm a Supreme Court justice now. I'm running for U.S. Senate. Really good emotional, really good story of self kind of concept, right? The problem is
my childhood home here in Detroit on 14th and McGraw.
Here, let's.
This is the Constitution.
So,
this has been my North Star for the 18 years that I was a rule of law justice on Michigan Supreme Court.
So, like, you can see, like, it's ruined. Like, it's absolutely ruined. Like, this thing is just not good because now if they, like, again, great concept. Great concept. Like, the location totally adds to the story. The problem is there's a lot going on in this location that detracts from what he is saying. And so what they should have done is, rather than just say, okay, Bob, like, go ahead, I got you, they should have, like, got a lav mic, like a remote mic, to cut down on the ambient sound around him. Yes, a proper microphone would have been the absolute right thing to do here, because it just gets lost, and you don't want people, you want people to focus on what you're saying, not trying to hear what you're saying or being distracted because there are loud ass buses rolling by. So that's one example of the need to utilize location effectively. Now we're going to talk about Ben Knopp. No one has, show of hands, has anyone here ever heard of Ben Knopp? No. Ben Knopp now exists for this purpose, for me to show you what not to do. So Ben Knopp was running for mayor of Toledo. And one of the big issues in that campaign was fire hydrants that didn't work. And that's a big problem in a lot of major cities because of our failing infrastructure, fire hydrants that just don't work. And then firefighters show up to the scene of a burning house, and lo and behold, the fire hydrant doesn't work. And he was running against the fire chief of Toledo in this mayoral race. So again, he had a great idea. We're going to go to a neighborhood where we know a fire hydrant doesn't work, and we're going to have a press conference in front of it. The problem is he didn't talk to the neighbors first.
Are you done? Okay. All right. We have a situation in Toledo where there's faulty fire lines, and
So Ben Knopp did not have a good day that day. And really there were a few things that he could have done. So there you have, he's trying to have this press conference, and some dude on his porch is like drinking a beer, yelling like, boo, Ben Knopp, boo, like go somewhere else. Completely ruins it, completely ruins the press conference. But again, the idea there was solid, right? We're gonna go in front of this fire hydrant that doesn't work. But they didn't talk to the community. They didn't talk to the people who they would be holding an event in front of their houses. And I think one of the reasons that this guy got mad is because one of the people that were involved in the press conference accidentally stepped on some of his flowers. But what an opportunity missed. Because if the Ben Knopp campaign had gone to the 4 or 5 houses in that area that would be involved with this as a backdrop to this press conference, he could have gone up to them and said, hey, my name's Ben Knopp. I'm running for mayor. I don't know if you knew this, the fire hydrant outside of your house doesn't work. And that is a huge part of my campaign, is making sure that we have good public infrastructure so people don't die in fires. Is it okay if I do a press conference in front of your house? Granted, public sidewalk, he has every right to be there, but this was a distraction that could have easily been avoided. And it's actually an even bigger opportunity missed because this guy could have been brought into the fold. You know, he could have weighed in on what it's like living in a neighborhood where the fire hydrant outside of his house does not work. If a fire breaks out in his neighborhood, he is in some trouble. So again, have the location be a net positive, not a net negative. So those are two sort of examples of, you know, how things can go wrong. But, you know, using things as a backdrop, whether that is a public school, a bunch of smokestacks, toxic waste dump, you know, those sort of things that can add to the background of your issue. Also, you know, have weather, right? Weather is an unknown sometimes. So if you're doing something outside, have a backup plan in case the weather turns. So have that media advisory ready to go, maybe with a rain location that you can send out and inform reporters like, hey, it's raining and pouring outside, so we're moving to this location. Okay, posturing and positioning, which, by the way, this GIF here is from Talladega Nights, The Ballad of Ricky Bobby, with Will Ferrell. This was probably like 5 years ago. I did this similar training with a group of high school students, and they didn't know what this movie was, and it made me feel old. Like, despite the fact, like, I'm 30, so, you know, like, peak millennial, but, like, I had a bunch of 17-year-olds who were like, I don't know what that is, you know. But there's this scene in it after he, you know, does a NASCAR race for the first time, and he's doing an interview with ESPN, and he's talking. He's like, you know, the race went real good. Yeah, car ran well. And then he says, you know, I'm not sure what to do with my hands. And so, everyone, get your hands out. We're gonna do this, and we're gonna have some physical participation here. So, I'm gonna roll back here. So. Here I am, I'm talking. Let me back up a little bit more. Okay, so here I am, I'm talking, I'm making a point. I've got this little ball in my hand. You see it? It's about the size of maybe a cantaloupe. And you can kind of just bounce it around, toss it. And then when I want to emphasize a point, now I'm holding a beach ball or a watermelon. And I can go back and forth between the little ball and the big ball, you know, because I'm an engaged conversationalist. I move when I talk. So, but you can go between the little ball and the big ball, and it's an unassuming hand motion that allows you to be physical when you're talking without being distracting way up here, or your hands like, you know, I'm just sitting on my hands and I look stiff and uncomfortable, right? So it's a natural hand movement that's unassuming, allows you to talk, and it's just, so I want everyone to do that right now. Just practice that. Like, you got the little ball, and we're talking. Sam and Cayley are doing a great job with the spokesperson training, and I'm so excited to do practice interviews in a little bit. I am a little bit scared, but I know I'm gonna kill it, and I'm gonna feel so much more confident going forward. So that's what you can do with your hands. This, people don't like this. Like, intuitively, people do not like to be pointed at. But you can make a point. Look, this is what we're talking about. This, no one gets to do the Obama thumb, okay? This is the Obama thumb. He patented it. It's his. No one else gets to do it, all right? So unless you get permission from him, you can do the Obama thumb. But that's kind of what you can do with your hands. You know, and then posturing goes beyond just your hands. You know, being raised Catholic, I don't know if anyone can empathize with this, but I've seen probably half a dozen altar boys go down at long services, just passing out because they're standing there and their knees are all locked up, you know, and they're like these 12-year-old kids wanting to look cool, you know, in the church or whatever. And so they're standing there and they're all stiff and their knees are locked and they're cutting off blood flow to the rest of their body, and it's hot and there's like a rank smell of perfume in the air, and they end up passing out. I swear I've seen that probably half a dozen times in my life. So it's important for you to bend your knees, like be loose. Don't be so stiff on camera because you're going to constrict blood flow, you're going to constrict oxygen, and that tightness is going to come off and you're not going to perform as well. Additionally, like right now, you know, there's a difference between me sitting like this and talking to you and me sitting like this and talking to you. Right now I'm sitting on the very edge of my seat, and that's a really important thing. If you're doing, like I said, a Fox 2's like let it rip kind of style interview where you're on camera with a lot of other people, sit on the edge of your seat. To to help align your posture, because you look engaged, you look active, you got good blood flow, good alignment of the spine, versus, you know, here, if I was to do the training from here the whole time, I mean, you guys would say Sam looks disinterested, he looks lazy. So being engaged and sitting on the edge of your seat is good. And you can just kind of tuck your feet under you, cross your feet. One note, if you're wearing like a jacket, like a sport coat or suit coat or whatever, this can happen. Like it bunches up around your shoulders. So what you want to do, and I actually caught our executive director right before we did this big national live stream. He was sitting there and he was like, I'm ready for the live stream. And I was behind the camera and I was like, Lonnie, sit on it. And so he like sat on his coat, which helped pull it down. So those are just little things with posturing and positioning to help you feel more confident and make you look good on camera. What will I wear, right? The $1 million question. First is remember who you're representing. And you want to be a good representative of your issue, your campaign, your organization. So wear something that would be appropriate to that effect. Now, if you're out doing a recycling rally and everyone's got t-shirts, you know, or something like that, great, wear that, right? That's shows you're active, maybe reinforces your message, all that kind of stuff. But you want to be comfortable. I'm a jeans and t-shirt kind of guy. Like if you put me in a suit, I will feel stiff. I will feel tight. So what we always tell folks is when it comes to your interview wardrobe, take whatever you are comfortable, like a comfortable everyday outfit for you, and then like one step above that. Because like I said, I'm not going to wear a suit and tie. I will feel stiff. I'm going to feel hot. It's just not me. So if I'm going on a TV interview, what I'll probably do is, and I keep a button-down blue shirt on the back of my door in my office for this purpose. So I can wear what I'm comfortable with during the day, and then, oh, it's an interview. Great, I got my sport coat, I got my button-up shirt, I tuck the shirt into my pants, put on the sport coat, and I'm good to go. So, you know, you want to wear like solid colors. You want to avoid intense patterns. Things like really tight, if you think about like really tight, like flannel or like paisley kind of patterns, sometimes those can move and shift on camera, sort of like those 3D glasses, like the ones with the red lens and the blue lens, and you put them on and everything kind of looks weird and distorted. Certain patterns can do that on camera. And we don't want anything, again, just like background noise or people yelling from their porch. We don't want anything distracting from our message. So like simple, solid colors that you are comfortable in is really kind of what I would advise to do. I don't actually think I've seen anything that anyone's wearing that I would be like, no, don't wear that. So good job. You all came prepared for that. And then real quick, we'll talk about going off the record. So I mentioned this in the webinar, going off the record, it's like one of those, it sounds like one of the sexier parts of doing interviews. Like you're, you know, ooh, we're going off the record. We're, you know, it's Watergate, it's House of Cards. Like, so what going off the record means is what I'm saying to you won't get printed. You won't attribute it to me. You won't tell anyone you got it from me. And the information that I'm giving you, you will need to go and verify yourself. However, that terminology can vary from person to person. And the concept of going off the record needs to be agreed to and understood by both parties involved beforehand. So you can't just, in the middle of an interview say, and off the record, this. That's not how it works. And, you know, I had elected officials when I was a reporter say, you know, at the end of an interview, after they said something they shouldn't have, this is all off the record and you can't use any of it. That's just not how it works. And you don't ever want to assume anything is off the record. Like I did one time and my comments ended up in a national BuzzFeed report. However, I was on message, like I always am. So it wasn't too big of a deal, but I got too comfortable. And I'd had some off-the-record conversations with a journalist, just giving him some background on the state of an LGBTQ policy in Michigan. And then one day I was talking to him, assuming that it was off the record. It was not. My boss called me in and was like, when did you do an interview with BuzzFeed? And I was like, shoot. Again, I was on message, so like no damage done, but you don't ever want to assume anything is off the record. And odds are, for most of the issues we're going to be working on, there's no reason to do it, because why not just have it be on the record so you can make sure you're sticking to your P's and Q's and staying on message. Okay, so that was a lot right there. And next, I think we're going to take a break here. And then I think we're going to do like a 40, we're a little over time. That's okay. We built in some buffer time. But any questions about the stuff that we just covered before we take a break and then go into practice interviews? All right. So next, we'll take a break, and then what we're going to do is we're going to break into two groups like we did for elevator pitches. Cayley will be acting as a reporter, doing a Zoom interview with you, and I will be doing a radio interview. So really the format won't change for the Zoom interview. Everyone will kind of stay in, on video, and you should practice, making sure that you're at the right eye level, that you're maintaining eye contact, that you're not being distracted by anything in the background. So normally if you're doing a Zoom interview, we would definitely want you to make sure, have your background right. Have whatever's in the background not be distracting, don't have your dirty laundry back there or whatever. Obviously for this, wherever you're seated, and actually it looks like most of your guys' backgrounds are pretty solid. I think everyone is kind of, in the last couple of months, gotten used to the idea of having a Zoom ready household behind them at least. So, but then for the radio, what we'll do is make sure you got your phone. Is there a way to call into the breakouts? Is that a thing that people can do?
So it depends how people, some folks right now are probably just on here through their laptop, but you can change your audio. In the bottom left-hand corner, you can flip-flop between laptop and phone.
Okay.
You can have people do that, and that way they're still in the breakout and they're not leaving the meeting and coming back in. That'll probably be easiest. Okay.
Yeah. So we'll mess around with that once we get into the breakouts. But what we'll have you do is to try to simulate a radio interview as best as possible. You will call into the meeting, leave away from the computer so you're not looking at it, and then you will be doing an interview with me as a radio host, and everyone will be listening, and then we will come back together and we'll constructively critique each other and give some pointers, and then we'll flip. So I think we're taking a 45-minute break, so hydrate, grab some food or whatever, practice your talking points in your elevator pitch. Make sure your phone is charged up and nearby, and I think we'll come back at 12:15.
Yeah, and folks, you don't have to leave the meeting or anything. I'm going to keep it open. So if you just want to mute yourself, turn off your camera, and then hop back on 12:15, maybe a minute or two before. That way we can kind of get right into it. We'll do that.
All right. And just any questions, comments before we break? All right. Well, we'll see you folks at just before 12:15 then. Folks, think of those couple of practice rounds there.
I thought it was super helpful, especially getting to hear other people's and the feedback from that as well, because there was all kinds of things that I hadn't thought of. And because of the feedback and stuff, I was able to take some notes and change some of my own ways of doing it when it was my turn.
Did anybody, I'd be curious, was anyone absolutely I am horrified of having to practice, I'm nervous about doing this, and then at the end of this, you feel a little bit better? Is that's what we go for? That's what we're aiming for here. So I'm seeing some nods, some hands.
Yeah, I would have to say I feel a little bit better. I think that I would be able to tackle it.
Yeah.
With that practice. I think that practice is key, and bringing in somebody to listen to me go through it a couple of times, and even maybe having some questions that they can ask me just so I can kind of get in the habit of what am I going to say. I think on the radio, I felt a little more confident just because I didn't have the visual part of it, and I could like look at my notes, or I could go, oh yeah, I want that point. And I think with having that video, I felt like, oh my gosh, it's like my mind, I didn't have an anchor. I didn't have an anchor to anything. So I had to just like be able to come up with things. So it was a little more harder with the video added.
It's amazing how confident and knowledgeable people can be about an issue. And then for some reason, when there's that lens looking at you and you have to consider the visual aspect of it, it can throw people sometimes, right? And again, most media interviews, like these are not, while these skills can translate to, you know, a bunch of other areas. And I think I talked about that with one of the groups, right? From conversations with, you know, volunteers or people who are trying to get active, or if you're talking to like funders trying to get some grant money, like understanding that, like, you know, stick to values and emotions and appealing to people's empathy, and understanding how to keep things short and concise while making sure that you have the key pieces of information in there. That, like, these skills are transferable to other areas than just talking to reporters, right? However, interactions with reporters and interviews where you're being asked questions, your answers are being recorded, and it's not a natural thing, right? That's not something that most people deal with on a regular basis. So we always try to kind of like throw you guys in both feet first, throw some weird questions at you, just to sort of get used to sort of what it's like in a very low stakes, supportive, and fun, I hope, environment. So, Cayley, anything else from the groups that you were with as far as themes, best practices?
Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. Was someone else talking? Okay. Nope. I just want to make sure nobody had a question. One thing I wanted to bring up with folks is that when you are being asked a question, sometimes, you know, it's not going to be an interview where you're going to hear that journalist ask you a question and then people are going to hear your answer. So it's going to be really important for you to sort of repeat the question in the beginning of your answer too, so it sounds more like a complete sentence. The other thing is, especially in the time of Zoom, I know things are much different than they have been, is that if you are somebody that wears glasses, make sure that your screen isn't too bright or your glasses aren't too reflective, just because you don't want that glare to show through. And don't be afraid if you're on, you know, it's recorded, to just take that pregnant pause to articulate your thoughts and let the reporter know, because they want you to sound just as good as you want to sound good, because they don't want to put a crappy clip up on, you know, their social media and all that. Yeah, so that's what I've got. Is there anybody else that wanted to add anything or something significant that they learned today that they wanted to share with the group?
All right. Well, I've got just 2 more slides for you all, so I'm just going to share my screen one more time. Oops, not share, present. Here we go. All right. So let's talk social media etiquette real quick here. So I have on here, don't make the news because of Facebook unless you want to. So social media is on the record. Do not assume that, you know, putting the tag of, like, you know, retweets don't equal endorsements and these are my opinions or whatever on any sort of disclaimer on your Facebook or your Twitter. If you are going to associate yourself with an organization, the words and things that you post online can and will be used to speak like as if they're coming from that organization. I am sure that nobody here on this call is in danger of what we're seeing happening right now, where people are posting some really terrible things and some very ignorant things on their Facebook pages and are getting fired and called out and stuff like that as it relates to like racial justice. But know that if your social media is out there, you know, it can become part of the public record very easily. One of the first things when I would do when I was a reporter is I would check people's social media profiles to see kind of like what they were about, if they were legit, and try to collect some more background information on them. So social media is on the record. So just keep that in mind. It's a great way to, you know, be connected and share pictures of cats and your kids and all that kind of stuff. But just mind your P's and Q's when you're on social media, because the last thing that you want to do is say something that reflects poorly on your organization or is, you know, in contrast to what your organization is saying. So just think before you post, because the internet is a permanent record. You never know who's going to see it. You can't know where it's going to go. Here's a personal anecdote because I have run into this problem before. Back in 2014, when there was an election, there was a U.S. Senate race, and Terry Lynn Land, the Republican running for the Senate spot, I'm just gonna say she was not a very good candidate. She had a very, she was overcoached with how she was as a spokesperson, and so she started to really, she almost had like a tick where she would say the same thing over and over again, not out of a sense of like message repetition, but it was clearly some sort of line that they had fed her to say to make her seem more relatable, but it started to come off in some really strange ways. And that phrase was, well, I'm a mom, so, and she was on a radio station and she'd been asked like 5 or 6 questions, and for half of them, she started with, well, I'm a mom, and one of the questions was, how would you deal with ISIS? And she said, well, I'm a mom, so, and then she went into something about, and so I tweeted, everyone take a drink anytime Terry Lynn Land says I'm a mom. And that, which, you know, Progress Michigan, we have our own brand. We're snarky. We're kind of in your face. We're aggressive with our language, you know, kind of throwing caution to the wind sometimes. However, that tweet, along with a similar tweet from somebody from the Gary Peters campaign, were taken by right-wing news outlets, and the headline was, liberal activists hate moms. So, and then they ended up having a press conference about it with another Senate candidate, and the whole thing was, look at, you know, these left-wing activists attacking moms. They don't want moms in the U.S. Senate. It's like, well, no, I was more just making a, you know, some snarky commentary on somebody who's clearly not well prepped for a live radio interview, but it became a national news story in a certain segment of the media ecosphere. So, you know, I think I may have lost my Twitter privileges for a little while, but, you know, it wasn't anything that, you know, out of the ordinary for us. But again, you never know what can be pulled. And, you know, I know our executive director has been quoted in stories that he never did interviews for because he made a Facebook post about the news and the reporter just went to his page and pulled it. You know, me personally, if you look at my Facebook page and my Twitter account, it's basically all politics. I pretty much solely utilize my social media platforms as a way to like organize around the work that we do. And I've been very cognizant about that. So I delete way more than I post. And I'm always kind of thinking, who could use this? Is this reflective of our organization? Could this be taken out of context? That sort of thing. So just a very important note there, that social media is on the record. Just because it's on your personal page doesn't mean it won't be attributed to your organization, and just something to definitely keep in mind. Any questions about social media now that hopefully I've put the fear of God in you about it? All right. Well, just want to say thank you to the Ecology Center for having us. Again, this is my 6th year of doing this training. Always one of my favorites. Always a great crew of people, fun conversations. I love doing this training. And the plug I'm going to say is we've got our emails here, right? And I'm sure you've been part of webinars before where they say, hey, here's my email, reach out. I mean it. Like, reach out.
Please email us.
Yeah, email us. If you have a question, email us. If you need some advice, you're taking what we've taught you here and you're going to run with it and do an event or something like that, and you need somebody to like bounce some ideas off of or something like that, please reach out. Like, that's our role. Progress and Engage Michigan exists as a communications hub for the progressive community and other like-minded organizations. So if what you're working on falls within our value set, we are more than happy to help you make, the event as good as it can be, give you some advice, some consultation. And additionally, we provide this training along with, our Media 101 training, media relations, social media and digital media. We offer a, in-depth message and narrative development training around a concept known as the hero's narrative. And for the most part, like I said, as long as your organization is like within our value set, we'll provide these trainings for free, because that's what we see as our role in building effective communicators and effective messengers around the important issues that you are all working on. So please reach out if you do have questions or you want to bounce some ideas off of us. That's our job. We want to be here to support the important work that you are all doing. Any other questions before we let you all out into the world to go be the best spokespeople and get on Anderson Cooper?
The only thing that I'm not sure, did we ever get an email list of all the fellows? Because for instance, like if we want to practice with somebody, maybe the fellows, like, there were a few people easily that I would love to, because I don't have people just around that I can practice these things with. Make full sense that I could practice with some of the folks on here. And I don't think I have a handy email list yet.
Yeah, I can answer that question. So, when we send out the emails to all the fellows, the emails are there, but I can also send around a list that kind of has everyone's name and contact information. That's easy, I have that. So I'll include that in the next email that I send around with all the materials from today.
And then one last thing, because I brought this up with the last group, but I think it bears repeating. We find ourselves in a period of time and working on issues where there are a lot of threats facing the communities that we work in, populations that we serve, not just in our local communities in our state, but across the entire country. And to be an effective messenger, we need to show people that it doesn't have to be this way. So I appreciate you all being on here and doing this type of work, because so often apathy is our biggest problem that we will face to building the type of communities and the future that we want to see. So we always need to be working to capture people's attention, show them it doesn't have to be this way, and provide them a roadmap for going forward. Sharing stories of heroes in our community who have stepped up to do the right thing, showing people a plan of action of how we can actually get the changes we want to see is critical. And that's part of being what a good messenger is showing that there is a hope, there is a path forward, and together we can get there. So while we face a lot of threats, there are some badass people who are working to change it. And we want to lift those stories up, and we want to show people that it doesn't have to be this way. And that's important that you all remember that and that we preach that message in whatever work that you're doing going forward. Cool.
Awesome. Well, if there aren't any other questions, I really just want to take a moment. Again, Cayley, Sam, thank you so much for joining us today. Media training is always one of my favorite days. And so I'm glad we were able to figure it out, even though we had to meet virtually. I'm really glad that we were able to have all this time with everyone. So just a couple quick last minute housekeeping things to go over. Evaluation, I am going to chat out the link as well. It's also up on the webpage, and I will send it out in the follow-up email. But in case you want to get a head start on that, that's the evaluation. Please note that that is for media trainings part 1 and 2. We just combined it. So please share your feedback on that. And then the last thing for today is a quick reminder about our next meeting. So we will be joined by Carolyn Koch from the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services for a presentation on their Eat Safe Fish program. So chatting out that registration link as well, but it's also on the webpage, and I'll be sending out reminders. But other than that, again, thanks to all of you for joining us, and thanks so much to Progress Michigan and Engage Michigan for putting on this training. Take care, everybody. Enjoy your weekend. Stay safe, and keep fighting the good fight.
See you, folks.
Thanks, everyone. Have a good weekend.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you. It was great. Thank you.